Good morning, everybody. So today we will make introduction to Vietnamese civil law presented by Nguyen from Institute of Intellectual Property and Competition, 30 September 2021. And here the lesson. So someone asked me why you make the presentation in pink. So that's very special version that we want to consider civil law, a very short law and easy to study. So that might be very interesting color. The lesson objective is to understand the basic knowledge of general concept of Vietnamese intellectual civil law, apply basic knowledge of general concept of Vietnamese civil law, and we showing some case study. So we're going to see the lesson structures, concept, subject matter, methods of applicability, basic principle, and then sources of applicability. So you have some reading list of some books from our university. For example, General Provision on Civil Law, Ho Chi Minh City, Civil Law, Property, Right, and Inherent, and then some scientific commentary on new point of the 2015 Civil Code. About a legal document, we have the Constitution of Socialist Republic of Vietnam, 2013, Civil Code, many amendments, and new is 2015. So what is the concept of Vietnamese civil law? We have some legal branch in Vietnamese legal system and apply to civil relation, right and obligation of legal entity. So the Vietnamese civil law, you can see that we resolve problems between the civil relation, person to another person, right and obligation, and legal entity. Very, very important matter. About the general provision, we treat the subject, representative, property, and civil transaction. And then for some specified provision, we have property right, contract, non-contractual compensation for damage, which we call tort law. We're going to see and learn in the next chapter. And also we treat the property right, obligation, contracts, and some type of inherent. What about the scope? We have expanding from Ordinance of Civil Contract Consumption to the Civil Code 2005 and then the Civil Code 2015. In relation to other law, for example, we have some relation to Civil Code Consumer Law, Civil Law in General Law, and we will apply in case of other law don't have related regulation. So it's mainly indeed to the civil law. What about the subject matter? So the concept is a social issue that must be regulated by civil law and some subject to conduct of individual and legal entity and the personal and property right and obligation of individual legal entity in civil relation. So we have the two relation, property relation and then personal relation. So from property relation to object, money, valuable papers, and property right on an equal basis. And then for personal, we have relation to associated with personal factors, one or more subject. What about difference of the property relation and personal relation? The property relation can convert to money, whether the personal relation can't convert to money. And then the property relation can transfer to third party, and personal relation can transfer to third party. So for example, you have a house, so that type of property relation, you can transfer to third party. For the personal relation, you have your names and personal relation, so you cannot transfer to a third party. That is example. So for more information, you can see more on our YouTube channel. We have some books and some article comment, and also we update every day the news concerned to intellectual property law and civil law. Next one, for the methods of applicability. What is the method of applicability? That is the way that civil law affects a subject matter to lead to a certain order. We have some characteristic method: self-determination, freedom of commitment, and agreement. Some basic principles in civil law: we have equality, freedom, and voluntariness, of commitment, of agreement, some goodwill and honesty, do not infringe upon the legitimate right and interests of others, and then self-responsibility for non-performance or incorrect performance of civil obligation. So we have some basic principle: a principle of equal, a principle of freedom, a principle of goodwill, and then we have something to protect the legitimate interests of the right holder, and then we have something regulate the civil obligation to perform or non-performance or incorrect performance of parties. So it's quite very complete. For the equal principle, every individual or legal entity is equal and may not be discriminated against for any reason, and is equally protected by law for personal and property rights. So we can see in Article 3 of Civil Code 2015. So that is very fundamental right of the law. Freedom and voluntariness. Every individual and legal entity establishes, performs, and terminates their civil rights and obligation on the basis of free and voluntary commitment and agreement. So we have freedom to enter into a contract that's guaranteed by the civil law. About goodwill and honesty. That's difficult to evaluate what is goodwill and what is honesty. So Article 3 of Civil Code 2015 define individual and legal entity must establish, perform, and terminate their civil rights and obligation with goodwill and honesty. That's one of fundamental rights. About basic principle. So civil law also state that the establishment, performance, and termination of civil rights and obligation may not infringe upon national and ethnic interest, public interest, legitimate right, and interest of other people. So of course that we cannot exercise our right, which again to legitimate interest right of others. And lastly, the individual legal entity must bear self-responsibility for non-performance or incorrect performance of civil obligation. For more information, you can follow our YouTube channel, NIIPC. Thank you for your listening. Nguyen Cuong report from Institute of Intellectual Property and Competition Law, 30 September 2021. Thank you.